If you saw my last video, you'll know I spent a crazy amount on a bunch of games, and one of those games was this game right here, Dragonball Advance Adventure. And today we're going to take a look at this game, but first, a bit of context. Dragonball Advance Adventure is a beat-em-up platformer style game which was released in late 2004 in Japan and in mid-2005 everywhere else, receiving good to decent and in some instances above average reviews. And while this might not sound spectacular by any means, you've got to realise Dragon Ball games aren't hit or miss. They're mostly miss with the exception of the Budokai Tenkaichi and Xenoverse games. Most if not all of Dragon Ball games, which there are a lot of by the way, are mostly critically panned and rushed piece of trash games, or good or passable games, that just really aren't looked very fondly on by most fans for one reason or another. Whether or not these reasons are justified is completely up to you, but with this information in mind, let's take a look at this game and see if it's just another Dragon Ball game or if it stands out from the pack. Also, before I go any further, I'd just like to say, if you've never watched the original Dragon Ball anime, please, I implore you to watch it. Mainly because this game spoils pretty much all of the anime, but also because it's a fantastic watch and it's my favourite Dragon Ball series. So please just give it a look-see. Dragon Ball Advance Adventure follows the plot of the Dragon Ball anime up until the end of the Demon King Piccolo arc. Why they didn't finish the plot and just end at the end of the Piccolo Jr. arc, I'll have no fucking idea. Certain plot points from the anime are amended to make Goku always win, save for like one occasion, such as making him beat Jackie Chun and Tien in both tournaments, rather than losing to them like he did in the anime. The game being based on the anime, it pretty much rips its art style straight from the source, staying mostly faithful to the Akira Toriyama originals. The art style is entirely sprite based, and with a couple of exceptions which in fairness aren't even that bad, just a little odd looking, the sprites are great, and just further add to the charm of the game, and it is very representative of the charm that was present throughout the source material. Moving on to the controls are somewhat stiff, but responsive, and they can be learned, and you can easily adjust to them if you are willing to learn. One control choice did take me by surprise, and while the use of the wall jump is only really required for progression once throughout the entire game, the way it is executed did kind of baffle me. Where in any other platformer you'd move the analog stick to the opposite direction, or press the opposite button on the D-pad, this game uses the same direction as the wall you're facing. It's not a horrible design choice, and it did take me a couple of attempts, but by the end, I still wasn't completely used to it. The soundtrack is good but doesn't stand out a whole bunch. Like if you asked me to name a track from the soundtrack that stuck out to me, I probably won't be able to name any other than maybe the boss theme, but even that is pretty forgettable. But again, it's a great soundtrack, it's very bubbly and can be tense when it needs to be. And being a GBA game, it is very synth heavy, as many 16-bit games were. But one thing that stood out to me, naturally being a bass player, was the bass. It sounded quite accurate to what a real electric bass would sound like, or maybe they were just using a really good synth or program. And now let's tackle gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, it's a beat-em-up style game with platforming elements, and it handles and balances both elements well, but the game is a beat-em-up game first and foremost, meaning there's an emphasis on combat, and it really shines through. While the combat definitely isn't for everyone, I personally think it's good, and it functions well, and actually quite smoothly considering the limitations of the GBA. Apart from the regular game mode you guys have been seeing throughout the video, there's also some other game modes. First off is one-on-one mode, which is basically a classic 2D fighter mode. These fights are playable through the main game and are great, but here you can play as any character other than Goku. Second is minigame mode, filled with minigames which are present throughout the main game. They're passable, but they're probably not something I'd come back to. And lastly, we have extra mode, which actually took me aback once I learned what it was after researching. In this mode, you can play through the main story minus the cutscenes in any order you'd like, with 28 different characters, if you don't include Goku and Krillin of course. A very cool addition, adding a bunch of replay value at the cost of a lot of monotony too, I guess. Now I haven't played this game mode myself, and while it sounds fun on paper, in practice, I think it'd probably get old really fast, even if you haven't tried every other character that there is to play. All in all, Dragon Ball Advance Adventures is a great time, if a very short one. I mean, I spent, just over 3 hours, and I beat this game all the way through. And while it's a fun experience, I don't think I could excuse maybe getting a full complete in-box copy of this game, as it can go for stupid amounts. You can find a loose copy for relatively cheap, I think. But yeah, if you're not too bothered about the price and want one of few good Dragon Ball games, this game is definitely up your alley and you should definitely give it a look-see.